Hello, today's video is called Case 221. Today is September 22nd, 2021. Please note that last time I did videos about this topic, my channel was pulled down, so I will not be saying certain words and I will be pointing out a lot of times to the screen. And here, VX is going to be representing this word. The agenda for today is the 20-1. This is obviously, you know what that means. Scheme at a glance. 221 outlines specific cases, the reality specifically for pregnant women, and final comments. 20-1 scheme at a glance. Anchored in a fake emergency and using 4 false premises, the VX is being deployed over the world population. The 4 false premises are that this is a situation that is life-threatening, that the VX is effective, that the benefits are bigger than the risks, and that there are no other options and no other treatments, and everything is being fueled by the mass media or fake news as they are known now. If you simplify the plan, and we spoke about this in my last video, the 2 key initiatives are depopulation and the control of the survivors. So without the emergency, the scheme collapses immediately. Therefore, the emergency will never cease to be. The lawsuit will prove that these 2 layers are false. Let's talk about the outline. What is Case 221? It's a 113-page lawsuit filed in Alabama, June 10 of this year. And for the plaintiffs were America's Frontline Doctors, 25 adults and 18 minors, and the defendants are Javier Becerra from the U.S. Department of Health, Anthony, I'm going to refer to this as Fettuccini to avoid being pulled, FDA, and CDC. And the link is underneath if you want to go over the document. The emergency is an excuse, obviously, to authorize the VX, and you're actually making money for pharma and for the government. In the left, you're going to see the revenue. For the first quarter of this year, Pfizer made $1 billion in average per month, and Moderna $500 million per month. There's also a conflict of interest because the National Institute of Health is actually co-owning and co-creating this Moderna VX. So you can imagine there's only money for pharma and for the government. The virus was created with our taxes. In a statement from Fettuccini, we do know that he fueled at the very least $60 million to make sure that the viruses were more lethal as a result of this research. Liability is non-existent for pharma, everybody knows this, and basically we're being used as a human experimentation. In reality, there is no emergency. I invite you to stop the screen right now. I have a lot of information, so I can't stop in a lot of slides, but this is important because it will prove that the number of people that are being treated as a result of this, quote, emergency is so tiny that there is no emergency. In reality, it's not even a VX, and in the lawsuit, the plaintiffs are saying that it's actually a genetic manipulation, what is happening. Both benefits and risks are being overstated. The global risk of this, quote, pandemic, I hope I don't get pulled by that word, is actually 0.2%. The risk when you're less than 70 years old is 0.03. The risk when you're less than 50 is virtually 0. So clearly for all the children is absolutely non-existent. Here you're going to see the numbers as well. 95% of the deaths have at least 4 comorbidities, and obviously those comorbidities are simply other illnesses that are present in the person. So clearly the person had an issue. Maybe they died with this, but not of this. The risk is not yet known, but we have certain parameters already. We understand, for example, that 99% of all the deaths of these were attributed specifically to this one. And then on top of that, the increase on deaths has such high levels that is incredible. For example, if you had before 10 deaths per year, now you're seeing 2,500. The acceleration rate is extremely high as a result of this application on humans. Additionally, the magical solution is far from it, the absolute risk reduction. So this is the effectiveness of this brand, less than 1%. The effectiveness of this brand is a little bit over 1%. So clearly, this is not working. And for children, we already understand is 0 risk. We already also did in a previous video a conversation detailing numbers for both the US and Canada. But tax dollars are actually continuously fueling this fear. So this is a number for the US, and you can imagine that the whole world is consistently investing a lot of money doing nothing else but projecting fear. The real data is hidden, not only from us, regular people, but also from doctors. So the plaintiffs created a system similar to this one. You can read here what this stands for if you don't know. And they are able to collect data that was used for this lawsuit in particular. The information, as I was saying, is also being controlled and is not being provided to doctors so they can do informed decisions. Here, we're talking about also the fact that the PCR is a process, it's not a test, is used to manipulate. So the manufacturer has established a number of cycles. Everybody by now understands a little bit about the amplifications, but I'll explain it in case some of my audience don't know the details. But the point being, you have a set of parameters of certain number of cycles when you are actually doing the regular test. But after you inject people, the number of amplifications is going to be less. That means here you're going to have more negatives, and here you're going to have more positives. Let me explain this slowly. Kerry Mullis, which actually created the process, he won the Nobel Prize as a result of creating this. He actually said, and there are videos online that you can watch, there is no correlation that can be established between presence of fragments of viruses and a disease. He specifically developed this 35 years ago to talk about HIV and AIDS, but he couldn't prove it. So he actually said it doesn't work. And then here you can see a visual of the amplifications. You start with one particle, and then you double it, and then you double it, and then you double it, etc., until you have billions and trillions of amplifications. And the reality is that when you have less than 20 cycles or amplifications, you have all negatives, and when you have anything over and above 40, you're going to have all positive. So you can see how it's very easy to manipulate. Now, I want to share with you a couple of coincidences. Coincidence number one, this is the structure of this, and this is the structure of this. So very interesting. You have spikes in both. Actually, I'm going to do the next video about the fact that there are patents for everything. So that means somebody's making money, number one. And number two, it was human intervention. Coincidence number two. Mullis actually was very vocal against Fettuccini. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that you can watch on which he's saying he's just not very reliable. And then by coincidence, he died 4 months before the first case of this took place. So interesting. Alternatives are available. Everybody knows about all these things. I'm not going to say this just because, I can get pulled, but the alternatives not only exist, but they do work. This is a very interesting slide. It talks about an experiment that took place in Argentina. 800 healthcare providers actually took this, I can't say the word, and then 400 did not. The 800 were exposed all the time because these are doctors. They didn't get infected. And for the people who didn't take it, over half had the issue. So clearly, this works. Specific cases. The lawsuit talks about specific cases of doctors who are being pressed to inject people, and when they do not do it, particularly when they don't inject kids, they get terminated. Details are here if you want to stop and read a little bit more. And then we also see some catastrophic effects. There are cases after cases after cases. I'm going to go very fast over this. It's a lot of information, as you can imagine. This lady, for example, was unable to walk 18 days after the second shot. This lady was suffering extremely high fever. And what is interesting is here, she was transmitting to the person who was taking care of her. Jody is a lady who right away got Bell's palsy. For those of you who don't know, it actually creates a paralysis and trembling after that because there is a disconnection between the nerves and the muscles. This lady, for example, 4 days later, couldn't walk. This lady was experiencing 16 convulsions per day. This lady, 22 days later, had convulsions as well for 12 days and then constant tremblers. So all these people, they cannot even move properly, they can't work, etc. Other sworn statements, including the lawsuit, includes the fact that people are seeing that donors are dying after injection. Witnesses are actually seeing that they are seeing some deaths, and then also some elders are being injected without consent, and some other statements regarding animals that were tested. All of them died. The reality of what happens after you inject a person is that the spike protein is going to migrate. That is really interesting because typically it shouldn't do it, but it's programmed to do specifically that. And then it causes damage to the cardiovascular system as well as create neurological damage. And we know this from the experiments on animals. So what happens is that these spike proteins are going to bind tightly to the blood cells. And there are a lot of videos online that show you specifically what happens, and there are visuals that will show you. They also then accumulate, particularly in the spleen. We're going to see numbers about this in a confidential report from one of these companies. And the spleen is going to be able to fight germs in the blood. It's located actually here in the left side of your of your body, and is trying to help you, and you are going to make sure through this injection that it's not going to work properly. Antibody dependent enhancement, everybody has heard about this, the fact that it's actually creating more amplification of the issue instead of preventing the issue. The clots, everybody has seen visuals. This is one visual that actually is quite impactful for me. And then you also have autoimmune diseases, neurological damage, etc. So the risk on youth is clearly there. We should not be able to even talk about this need to inject people who have zero risk. And also you are creating myocarditis, that is the inflammation of the heart muscle itself, which I don't know if you know, but once you have a problem in your heart, it doesn't ever repair. And then pericarditis, that is the inflammation of the lining outside of the heart. And you have cases of 15 years old, like one presented in the lawsuit, that died of a heart attack, which is absolutely absurd. Targeting children without consent is actually illegal. As you all know, you cannot enter into a contract with a minor, so obviously you can't get consent from a minor, and people are doing initiatives at schools to inject people without the consent of the parents, which is absolutely illegal. Self-dissemination, everybody has heard of this, about the fact that people are spreading, spiking, as they say. So people that are in contact with others that are not injected are actually seeing this type of situation, bleeding, even on menopausal ladies. So it's clearly an issue. And a collateral damage that is being done is the fact that the screening of the blood donation is not happening. I spoke about this by coincidence in another video that is here also in my channel. So again, lots and lots of issues, specifically for pregnant women. Here is the confidential chart from this company. And then here you're going to see that the spike protein is being accumulated in the ovaries and also in the spleen. We already spoke about this, but here is the second most important accumulation. So clearly it's going to create a problem in terms of fertility. The pregnant women also are seeing infections in the placenta that create miscarriages, of course, 3,000 failed pregnancies specifically. The lawsuit talks about that. And then when you are breastfeeding, you're actually creating issues for your baby. So the babies present bleeding disorders in the gastrointestinal tract. So if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, please do not take this. Final comments. What is the Nuremberg Code? It's a set of research ethics to prevent what happened in the Second World War, with a lot of experiments are here listed, were performed into humans, and then the planet agreed not to do this again, and is the voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential. However, it's not happening right now. Here what we're seeing is a lot of communist methods. Here is part of the lawsuit, the chart of coercion, and what is happening with the situation on which we see a lot of threats, isolation, degradation, etc. The question becomes, why is this happening? Negative entities are experimenting with humans right now. The governments will not give us our rights back. It's up to each one of us to stand up and say no. Thank you very much.